In the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime franchise, we're introduced to dozens of interesting and unique characters throughout each series. Heroes, villains, and even anti-heroes like Seto Kaiba who walk the morality tightrope. Much like other anime franchises, how the writers want the audience to feel towards a certain character isn't always black and white. Sometimes downright despicable and vile villains are loved, and heroes are loathed. With that said, I do generally believe there are many characters that the show writers want us to like that we end up hating anyways. This can be for a myriad of reasons, such as a character being annoying, useless, unskilled, or just having an unlikable personality overall. In this video, I'll be covering 6 such characters and why they're so disliked. I'll also be distinguishing differences between the English dub and the Japanese sub versions of the characters, as sometimes their personalities are slightly different. As long as the general consensus in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community is that the character isn't liked very much and they aren't a straight up villain that we're supposed to hate, they'll be eligible for this list. Lastly, before we start, we are talking about the anime here, so I'm gonna go ahead and issue a spoiler warning. Anyways, let's begin. Number 1, Mokaba Kaiba, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. Let's start things off with one of the most useless characters in the entire Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime franchise. Truth be told, that's a very large part of the reason why most people don't like Mokaba to begin with, but make no mistake, it's not the only reason. When we're first introduced to Mokaba in the Duelist Kingdom arc, he unfairly blames Yugi for Kaiba's existential crisis and disappearance with no other proof other than, "You beat my brother in a card game, so it's your fault." He follows that up with trying to outright steal Yugi's star chips halfway through their duel rather than winning them fair and square. Starting to understand why nobody actually likes this guy. Anyways, when he's not stealing or blaming others for his family problems, Mokaba has a frequent habit of getting kidnapped, and when I say kidnapped, I mean like by literally everyone and at every opportunity that he can possibly find. Quite frankly, he puts Taya to shame in this category. He was kidnapped by Kimo, Tristan, Noah, and about half a dozen other characters throughout the series. So while Seto Kaiba is a billionaire, genius, visionary, badass, those qualities clearly don't run in the family because Mokaba displays none of them throughout this series. In fact, I'd make the argument that he's more of a burden than anything for most of the show. Number 2, Yuya Sakaki, Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc V. Can we all just admit that prior to 7s, Yuya was by far the worst main protagonist? I mean, seriously, was anyone else completely annoyed by the fact that he spent almost the entire series trying to impress and become friends with every person he laid eyes on? It was flat out exhausting. If you've never seen Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc V, just know that Yuya is an entertainment duelist. This means that pleasing the audience to him is just as important as actually winning a duel.
クライマックス相手のライフは驚異の1万超えこれを全て消し去れましたらご喝采ミラクルロケットショー発動なんだこれはへえ綺麗じゃない
However, this mentality isn't strictly related to dueling. In fact, even at times of straight up war, Yuya feels the need to make everyone smile for some reason. Some might say that this is him having compassion, but I'd argue in a lot of instances, it comes off as just straight up asinine. Also, when it comes to his actual dueling, he won way too many duels strictly based on picking up the perfect action card at the right time. I know Yu-Gi-Oh! Main characters often have plot armor, but seriously, this was just absurd how many times he would find the exact card he needed literally floating in thin air to save him, yet that rarely if ever happened for his opponents. Lastly, I'm pretty sure he spent the entire show having a crush on his own mother, which is a plot twist so ludicrous, I'll have to save it for another video. Number 3, Aoi's eyes in Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. As always, Aoi is a pretty complicated character. I really like her, but my opinion is irrelevant. Aoi is a character that the writers really didn't do any favors. For starters, her Blue Angel persona is fairly divisive. Hi! While I personally believe Blue Angel's bubbly, sunshine, and rainbows demeanor contrasts with Yosaku's ice-cold one beautifully, there's no denying that her completely dumping it after season 1 made the entire thing feel like an unrewarding facade. Aoi gave up on Blue Angel because she felt like it didn't match her true self, and she was doing it just to be liked by the fans, which is completely understandable. However, her soon after character arc of wanting to be someone who protects others instead of being the one who's always saved felt incredibly forced and really cliche. Also, can we just admit her second persona, Blue Girl, that just sucked. It was uninspiring, unimpressive. I'm pretty sure I could go on with other superlatives that start with un, but you get the point. Hell, it didn't even look cool. That's probably why it didn't even last an entire season. I think Aoi is just a case where the fans didn't really care for her fairly messy and muddled character development that started off with good potential but got kinda lazy at the start of season 2. Lastly, she does spend 2 seasons playing a burn deck, and that'll always get you hate in the Yu-Gi-Oh community. Number 4, Yuma Tsukumo, Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. Okay, truth be told here, I think a lot of the reason Yuma receives so much ire from the fans is largely the writer's fault and has a lot to do with how different the tone of Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal was from Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. We all know that Zexal had far more of an upbeat tone and some would argue was more catered towards a younger audience.
Don't you have a letter in your post bag for me? The name's Yuma Tsukumo.
Yuma, huh? Let's see here. Okay, right. Here we go. Let me just double check this and... Nope.
Which were both initial turnoffs for fans. For starters, prior to Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's, Yuma was the single youngest main protagonist in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise at the age of 13, as opposed to Yusei Fudo, who was the oldest at the age of 18. The writers also made Yuma a complete novice at duel monsters in the first half of the series, going as far as to make him appear outright inept at times. Eventually, we know that he grows to be a great duelist, but it's still pretty painful watching him constantly trip over himself against objectively bad opponents. Yuma did lose to Bronk 20 times in the span of 2 episodes, for goodness sake. And I've gotta mention this, I feel like not only did they have Yuma look near incompetent at times, but they also undercut his victories by having Astral do so much of the work. Seriously, I couldn't have been the only one who was annoyed every time Astral just straight up told Yuma exactly what he needed to do. It's like, why even have Yuma there if Astral is just gonna make all the plays that leads to his victories? I didn't quite understand that. And maybe this is just a personal quip and I'll end on this. I just have to say, Yuma's dub voice was basically unbearable and I think it kind of ruined him for me.
You hate tomatoes, Yuma? I admit it. I've hated them since I was a baby. Yuma, you've got to eat those vegetables. You can't make me.
Number 5, Cyrus Truesdale, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Let me make this very clear at the beginning. When I say people dislike Cyrus, I'm specifically referring to the Japanese sub version of GX. As I've mentioned many times on this channel, the GX dub version is like an abridged comedy series that doesn't take itself all that seriously and is absolutely brilliant for it. We know that being a younger brother in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise almost certainly means mediocrity and never quite living up to your much cooler and more successful older brother. Cyrus, of course, embodies this. He's less successful, less popular, less respected, and a far worse duelist than his brother Zane. Add on top of that he often comes off as a pitiful nerd with a deck that is just well, pathetic, and he's more or less looked at as somewhat of a loser. And I don't mean that loser but great potential and we all know he'll be badass when he taps into it type. I mean the regular loser type. So what differentiates the English and Japanese versions, you might ask? Differences so large that it led to audiences having vastly different feelings towards him as a character. Well, in the English dub, Cyrus, like many of the characters, is absolutely hilarious.
Is this a dream? It feels more like a nightmare to me. It reminds me of this one time at Duel Camp.
Don't get me wrong, he still comes off as an all shucks woe is me nerd who can't quite live up to Zane type, but at least he feels like one of the guys. When he, Hasselberry, and Chaz are ragging on each other as teenage boys often do, Cyrus feels perfectly at home, as if he can roll with the punches. Half the time he's like either memeing and the other half he's either laying out zingers.
I've got one word for you, Sarge. Shower! Try using one. It actually gets you clean.
Oh, and for your information,
I showered last week. Well, next time stand under the water.
But they're smart dingers because, he's still a bookworm at heart. So overall, dub Cyrus, awesome bro, sub Cyrus, lame Oni-sama nerd. Number 6, Leo, Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. I've been thinking a lot about this lately, and I've come to the conclusion that I've been pretty harsh to Leo historically on this channel. So I don't see any reason to change things up now. Maybe I and many dislike Leo so much because we all recognize that his sister Luna is basically the same character but vastly superior. She's smarter than Leo, more talented, and was a dueling child prodigy, which of course means that she's better at duel monsters than him. Quite frankly, I just didn't think that Leo brought much to the table in any of the arcs during 5Ds. He wasn't technically a signer for like 99% of the series, and it feels like they could have done pretty much the entire show without him and nothing would have changed. Leo largely felt like he was just kind of there the entire time without actually doing anything of importance. In fact, I actually think that his most memorable moments on the show were all in defeats where he nearly dies and has to be saved by a better duelist, which of course is literally everyone else around him.
Leo, please tell me that you're all right. Luna, everything's under control. Of course it is. But now it's time for me to help you. I'm gonna take over your duel, okay? I guess I really let you down, huh, sis? I couldn't even win one little match.
If you can think of a show where one of the main characters is just kind of along for the ride, that's Leo and what he is for Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. I guess in his defense, Leo was originally supposed to be the 5th signer, but then they rewrote the show and made Crow the signer instead, and Leo kind of got relegated to sidekick as well. Maybe if they stuck with the original script, Leo would have felt like a more rewarding character, but that didn't end up happening. Anyways, what did you guys think of my list? Were there any other characters that you guys thought the writers really wanted us to like and enjoy, but you just couldn't get behind and you hated that character anyways? If so, leave that in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already and turn on that notification bell for more videos.